The mining ship Hanbit 7 moved slowly through the asteroid field. Captain Minho sat in his chair on the bridge, watching the screens that showed the dark rocks floating in space. He had been doing this job for 10 years now. Find asteroids, mine the valuable crystals inside them, and move on to the next one. It was boring work, but it paid well. "Captain, I am seeing something strange," Yuna said from her station. She was the ship's engineer, young and smart. Her fingers moved quickly across her control panel. "There is an energy reading coming from the big asteroid ahead. It does not match anything in our database." Minho leaned forward. In 10 years of mining, he had never heard Yuna sound confused. "What kind of energy?" "I do not know. It is like nothing I have seen before. It is coming from deep inside the asteroid." Very deep, Deho walked onto the bridge. He was the security officer and Minho's oldest friend. They had served in the military together before becoming miners. "What is going on?" "We found something unusual," Minho said. "Yuna, can you tell how deep it is?" Yuna worked on her computer for a moment. "About 3 kilometers into the asteroid. We would need to drill for at least 2 days to reach it." "That is against company rules," Deho said. "We are supposed to mine the surface crystals and move on. Drilling that deep costs too much time and fuel." Minho thought for a moment. Deho was right. The company would be angry if they wasted time on something that might be nothing. But Yuna was rarely wrong about energy readings. If she said this was strange, it probably was. "Start drilling," he said. "I will take responsibility if the company complains." The drilling took 3 days, not 2. The asteroid was harder than they expected. The whole crew worked in shifts, keeping the drill running all the time. Hana, the medical officer, brought coffee and food to everyone. Kyung, the ship's scientist, could not stop talking about what they might find. "It could be a new type of crystal," Kyung said excitedly, "or maybe a metal we have never seen before. The energy signature is completely unique." "Or it could be nothing," Deho said, "or something dangerous. We should be careful." Finally, on the 3rd day, the drill broke through into an empty space. "We have reached a chamber," Yuna announced. "It is big, maybe 50 meters across." Minho suited up along with Yuna, Deho, Kyung, and Hana. They took the small transport pod down through the tunnel the drill had made. When they reached the bottom, their light showed something impossible. The chamber was not natural. Someone had built it. The walls were smooth and covered with symbols. In the center of the chamber stood rows of containers made from a clear material like glass. Each container held a glowing liquid that gave off a soft blue light. There were hundreds of them. "This is alien," Kyung whispered. "This is an alien structure. We just made first contact." "First contact with what?" Hana asked. "There is nobody here." "With whoever built this place," Kyung said. She walked to the nearest wall and started taking pictures of the symbols. "These markings are writing. A language. If I can figure it out, we might learn who made this." Yuna approached one of the containers carefully. "The energy reading is coming from the liquid, all of it. Each container is generating power. Do not touch anything," Deho warned. "We have no idea what this stuff is or what it does." Suddenly, the chamber filled with light. A figure appeared in the center of the room, floating above the ground. It looked like a woman, but not quite human. Her skin was too smooth, her eyes too large. She was made of light, like a hologram. The figure looked at them, and when she spoke, they did not hear the words with their ears. The voice appeared directly in their minds. "You are the first to find this place in 10,000 years, the figure said. "I am a recording left behind by my people. We called ourselves the Eternals." The 5 humans stood frozen, staring at the hologram. "The liquid in these containers is our greatest achievement and our worst mistake," the hologram continued. "It grants immortality. Those who drink it will never age, never sicken, never die from natural causes. Your bodies will heal from any injury. You will live forever," Kyung gasped. Hana took a step back. Deho's hand moved to his weapon out of instinct. "We thought immortality would be paradise," the hologram said. Her voice sounded sad. "We were wrong. When people cannot die, they cannot change. Conflicts that should end in decades last for centuries. Mistakes that should be forgotten are remembered forever. We became stuck, unable to move forward, unable to let go of the past." "What happened to you?" Minho asked. "We chose to end," the hologram said. "We found a way to move beyond physical existence entirely. But we left this place as a warning. If you drink this liquid, you will never be mortal again. Think carefully before you choose." The hologram faded away, leaving them alone in the chamber with hundreds of containers of glowing liquid. We should leave this place and seal it, Deho said immediately. This is too dangerous. Immortality? That is not something humans should have. But think of the medical uses, Hana said. If this liquid can heal any injury, it could save millions of lives. We could cure diseases, repair damage from accidents. We cannot just ignore that. The hologram said it was their worst mistake, Kyung added. An entire civilization tried immortality and failed. We should listen to their warning. Or we should learn from their mistakes, Yuna said. They failed, but that does not mean we will. Maybe humans are different. Maybe we can handle immortality better than they did. They argued for an hour. Deho wanted to destroy everything. Hana wanted to take samples for research. Kyung wanted to study the structure more before deciding. Yuna wanted to try the liquid. Minho listened to all of them. Finally, he made his decision. He walked to one of the containers and picked it up. The liquid inside glowed brighter in his hands. Captain, no, Deho shouted. If this is dangerous, better I find out than risk all of you, Minho said calmly. If it works, we will know it is safe. If it fails, you can still leave and seal this place. You do not have to do this, Hana said. We can test it other ways. Minho smiled. I am the captain. It is my job to go first into danger. Before anyone could stop him, he opened the container and drank. The liquid tasted like electricity and light. It burned going down his throat, then spread through his body like fire in his veins. He fell to his knees. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was his crew rushing toward him, their faces filled with fear. Then everything went black. The transformation had begun. Minho woke up 3 days later. He opened his eyes and saw Hana sitting beside his bed in the medical bay. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. When she saw him awake, she jumped up. Captain, you are alive. She pressed a button on the wall. Everyone, he is awake. Minho tried to sit up. His body felt strange, like it was too light and too strong at the same time. What happened? You have been in a coma for 3 days, Hana said. Your body went through massive changes. Your heart rate went up to 300 beats per minute. Your temperature reached 42 degrees. We thought you were dying. But then your body started to stabilize. The rest of the crew rushed into the medical bay. Deho looked angry and relieved at the same time. Yuna had her scanner in her hand, already taking readings. Kyung stood at the door, watching carefully. How do you feel? Yuna asked. Minho thought about it. He felt different. Very different. He could hear the hum of the ship's engines, even though they were 3 levels away. He could see tiny details on the walls that he had never noticed before. His mind felt faster, like he could think about 10 things at once. I feel good. Better than good. I feel amazing. That is what worries me, Deho said. You should not feel amazing after being in a coma for 3 days. Hana ran several tests on Minho over the next few hours. Every test showed impossible results. His cells had completely changed. They no longer aged. When Hana cut his arm to test healing, the wound closed in less than 5 minutes. His bones were stronger. His muscles were more efficient. His brain activity was off the charts. You are not human anymore, Hana said quietly. I mean, you are still human, but you are also something more. The liquid changed you at the cellular level. According to my tests, you will never age. You will never get sick. You can heal from almost any injury. You are immortal. The word hung in the air. Immortal. Minho looked at his hands. They looked the same as always, but they were not. Nothing was the same anymore. During those 3 days while Minho was unconscious, the hologram had continued to teach them. She had told them the full story of the Eternals. They had been a peaceful civilization, advanced in science and art. When they discovered immortality, they thought all their problems were solved. No more death meant no more loss, no more grief, no more fear. But they were wrong. Wars that should have ended in years lasted for centuries because no one died to end them. Leaders who made mistakes stayed in power forever because they could not die and pass on control. People held grudges for hundreds of years. Society stopped moving forward because the same people stayed in charge, with the same old ideas forever. After 5,000 years of immortality, the Eternals realized they had made a terrible mistake. They could not evolve. They could not change. They were stuck. So they found a way to transcend their physical bodies entirely and move to another plane of existence. They left behind their warning for any other species that might find their technology. But we are not them, Minho said after Kyung explained everything. We are human. Maybe we can handle immortality differently. Or maybe we will make the same mistakes, Deho said. We should destroy the rest of the liquid and never speak of this again. It is too late for that, Yuna said. She held up her tablet. I have been recording everything. All our data, all the scans, everything the hologram told us. It is already backed up to the ship's main computer. Why would you do that? Deho demanded. Because this is too important to hide, Yuna said. This is the biggest discovery in human history. Immortality. We cannot keep it secret. They argued about it for days as they traveled back toward Earth. Deho wanted to destroy everything. Hana wanted to study it carefully before telling anyone. Kyung wanted to let Earth's government decide what to do. Yuna wanted to release all the information to everyone immediately. Minho listened to all of them. He was learning to control his new abilities. He could hear conversations happening in other parts of the ship. He could move faster than any human should be able to move. His mind could process information at incredible speeds. But he was still himself. He still thought like Minho. He still cared about his crew. The immortality had changed his body, but not his soul. 2 weeks into their journey home, they received a message from Earth. The company that owned the Hanbit 7 had been tracking their communications. They knew about the discovery, and they were not the only ones. Governments around the world had intercepted the transmissions. Military leaders wanted the liquid as a weapon. Corporate executives wanted to sell it. Politicians wanted to control it. The United Earth Council sent an official message. The Hanbit 7 was ordered to return to Earth immediately. All samples of the liquid were to be handed over to government scientists. The crew would be debriefed and then held in isolation while officials decided what to do with the discovery. They are going to lock this away, Yuna said, or sell it to the highest bidder, or use it to create super soldiers. They will not let normal people have access to immortality. What choice do we have? Deho asked. We cannot fight Earth's government. Minho stood up. He had made his decision. We release everything. All our data, all our research, the location of the asteroid, everything. We put it on the public networks where everyone can access it. We make immortality available to all humans, not just the rich and powerful. They will arrest us, Hana warned. We will be charged with crimes against humanity or something like that. Maybe, Minho said. But this discovery belongs to everyone. Not to governments or corporations. To everyone. If we let them control it, only the powerful will benefit. If we release it freely, every human can choose for themselves. Yuna smiled. I already prepared the upload. I was just waiting for you to say yes. She pressed a button on her tablet. In seconds, every piece of data about the immortality liquid spread across human networks. News stations picked up the story within minutes. By the time the Hanbit 7 reached Earth, the whole world knew about immortality. The reaction was immediate and divided. Some people celebrated, calling it humanity's next evolution. Religious groups protested, saying immortality was against nature. Scientists rushed to verify the data. Governments tried to control the narrative but failed. The information was out and it could not be taken back. Ships launched toward the asteroid immediately. Some were government vessels. Others were private ships, owned by corporations or wealthy individuals. Within weeks, hundreds of people had reached the asteroid and drunk the liquid. Some died during the transformation. Others survived and became immortal like Minho. The world divided quickly. Those who embraced immortality formed groups and communities. Those who rejected it formed their own groups. Arguments broke out in families. Some parents drank the liquid while their children refused. Some children became immortal while their parents stayed mortal. Friendships ended. Marriages fell apart. 5 years after Minho first drank the liquid, humanity was split into 3 groups. The Ascended, who had chosen immortality, the Naturals, who rejected it and wanted to live normal mortal lives, and the Undecided, the largest group who were still trying to figure out what to do. Minho watched all of this happen. He had started something he could not stop. Humanity was changing and no one knew if it was for better or worse. The Eternals had failed with immortality. Would humans fail too? Or would they find a way to make it work? He did not have the answer yet. But he knew one thing for certain. Humanity would face this challenge in their own way. Not by following the path of the Eternals, but by creating something entirely new. The transformation of humanity had only just begun. 20 years had passed since Minho drank the immortality liquid. He still looked exactly the same as he did that day. Not a single gray hair, not a single wrinkle. His crew had gone their separate ways. Yuna had become immortal, and now led a research station on Mars. Hana had chosen immortality too and worked as a doctor helping people through the transformation. Kyung had stayed mortal, but she was getting old now, her hair gray and her movements slower. Daeho had also chosen to remain mortal. He had married, had children, and now had grandchildren. He and Minho still met regularly, though it was getting harder. Every time they met, Daeho looked older while Minho stayed the same. It created a strange distance between them that neither wanted to acknowledge. The world had changed dramatically. The Ascended had established colonies on hostile planets where mortals could not survive. They worked on projects that would take centuries to complete. They had no fear of death, so they took risks that mortal humans would never take. They pushed the boundaries of science and exploration further than ever before. The Naturals had created their own communities on Earth and Mars. They lived traditional lives with traditional lifespans. They had children, grew old, and died. They argued that death gave life meaning. Without the pressure of time, they said, humans would lose their drive to accomplish things. They believed mortality was essential to being human. Most humans fell into the third group, the undecided. They watched both sides and could not choose. Some wanted immortality but feared the unknown. Others valued mortality but feared death. They lived in a strange middle ground, knowing they had to make a choice eventually but unable to commit. Then, in the 21st year after the discovery, everything changed. Humanity made first contact with aliens. The alien ships appeared in orbit around Earth without warning. They were massive, organic-looking vessels that seemed to be alive. When they broadcast their message, every human heard it at the same time, directly in their minds. We are the Vorid Collective. We have observed your species. You are divided and weak. Join us. Become part of the collective. Together we are strong. Scientists quickly learned what the Vorid Collective was. They were a hive mind species. Billions of individual creatures connected into one shared consciousness. They thought with one mind, acted with one purpose, and had no concept of individual identity. They had conquered dozens of star systems by absorbing other species into their collective. The United Earth Council sent a response. Humanity would not join the collective. Humans valued individual consciousness and freedom of choice. They would remain independent. The Vorid response was immediate. They attacked. Vorid ships swept through human space, destroying defense stations and attacking colonies. They were incredibly powerful. Their hive mind allowed them to coordinate perfectly. Every ship moved in sync with every other ship. They had no fear, no hesitation, no individual thoughts that might cause mistakes. Humanity fought back. But the early battles were disasters. Human forces were not coordinated enough. Commanders made mistakes. Soldiers panicked. Civilian populations fled, creating chaos. The Vorid expected a quick victory. They had defeated every other species they encountered within months. But humanity had something the Vorid did not understand. Something they saw as weakness was actually strength. The Ascended stepped forward first. They volunteered to be the frontline fighters. They could not be killed easily, so they could take enormous risks. They learned from every battle. An Ascended soldier who lost a fight would heal, remember exactly what went wrong, and try a different approach next time. They never forgot a lesson. They never repeated a mistake. The Naturals brought something different. They brought urgency. They knew their time was limited, so they innovated faster. They came up with wild, creative strategies that the cautious Ascended might not try. They took desperate gambles because they understood that sometimes you have to risk everything to win. The Undecided bridged both worlds. They could think like mortals and immortals at the same time. They saw possibilities that neither group alone could imagine. Minho became the unofficial leader of the human resistance. He coordinated between all three groups. He had the patience of immortality and the memories of mortality. He understood both perspectives. The war settled into a long, brutal conflict. The Vorid had superior numbers and technology, but humans adapted faster. Every time the Vorid developed a new weapon, humans found a counter within weeks. Every time the Vorid tried a new strategy, humans came up with 3 different responses. The key difference was individual creativity. The Vorid hive mind was powerful, but it was also predictable. They made decisions by consensus, which meant they moved slowly when faced with truly novel threats. Humans, on the other hand, had billions of individual minds. Each one could think independently, come up with new ideas, and act on their own initiative. One major battle changed the course of the war. The Vorid attacked the Ascended colony on Titan, one of the moons of Saturn. They sent a massive fleet expecting to overwhelm the defenders. The Ascended had only a small force, but they used tactics the Vorid had never seen before. Half the defenders pretended to retreat, drawing the Vorid ships into a trap. The other half had hidden in the ice below the surface. When the Vorid ships passed overhead, the hidden defenders erupted from beneath and attacked from below. The Vorid fleet was caught between two forces and suffered massive losses. More importantly, the trap worked because different commanders made independent decisions. They did not need to coordinate perfectly. Each group acted on their own, adapting to the situation as it developed. The Vorid could not predict this because they always acted in perfect coordination. They could not understand how chaos could be a strength. As the war dragged on, something unexpected happened. The three human factions grew closer. Ascended, Naturals, and Undecided all had to work together to survive. They started to appreciate what each group brought to the fight. Naturals admired the courage of Ascended soldiers who fought without fear of death. Ascended learned to appreciate the urgency and creativity that came from mortality. The Undecided showed everyone that you did not have to commit fully to one path or the other. You could draw strength from both. Daeho was getting very old now. He was nearly 70. One day he called Minho to his home. They sat together on the porch looking at the sunset. "I am dying," Daeho said simply. "The doctors say I have maybe 5 years left." Minho felt a pain in his chest that had nothing to do with physical injury. "You could still drink the liquid. It is not too late." Daeho shook his head. "No, I made my choice 20 years ago. I am at peace with it. I have lived a good life. I have children and grandchildren. I have seen things I never imagined. I am ready for it to end." "I will miss you," Minho said quietly. "I will miss you too, old friend. But my grandchildren will be here. Some of them chose immortality. You can watch over them for me." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun go down. Two old friends, one who would die and one who would live forever. Both had made their choices. Both accepted the consequences. The war with the Vorid continued. It had been going on for 3 years now. Neither side could gain a decisive advantage. But Kyung, working with a team of scientists, made a breakthrough. She discovered something about the Vorid that changed everything. The hive mind had a weakness. The perfect unity that made them so strong also made them vulnerable. If you could introduce something that made individual Vorid think differently from the collective, even for a moment, it could cause the whole system to collapse. Kyung called it a mimetic virus. Not a biological weapon, but an idea, a concept so disruptive that it would break the unity of the collective from within. The idea was simple but powerful. Individual choice. The concept that each being could make its own decisions, have its own thoughts, pursue its own goals. To humans, this was normal. To the Vorid, it would be revolutionary and terrifying. But there was a problem. To spread this idea through the Vorid collective, someone would have to interface directly with their hive mind. They would have to connect their consciousness to billions of alien minds and hold on to their individuality long enough to plant the virus. It was incredibly dangerous. If it failed, the person would be absorbed into the collective forever, conscious but trapped. When Minho heard about the plan, he volunteered immediately. He was immortal, which meant he could survive the physical strain. And he understood the value of choice better than anyone. He had made the choice to drink the liquid. He had watched humanity split apart and come back together over the issue of choice. If anyone could carry the concept of individual choice into the heart of the Vorid collective and survive, it was him. The mission would be the most dangerous thing humanity had ever attempted. But if it worked, it could end the war and change the Vorid forever. Minho prepared for the mission. He knew he might never come back. He knew he might lose himself forever in the alien hive mind. But he also knew this was what he had to do. Humanity was counting on him. And he would not let them down. The war had lasted 30 years now. Minho was 50 years into his immortality, but he still looked like a man in his 30s. He had watched friends grow old and die. He had seen children born and grow into adults. Time moved differently for him now. Years felt like months. Decades felt like years. Daeho had died 5 years ago. Minho had been at his bedside. His old friend had lived to be 95, surrounded by children and grandchildren. Some of them had chosen immortality, others remained mortal. Daeho had accepted both choices with grace. On his last day, Daeho had asked Minho a question. "Do you regret it?" "Drinking that liquid?" Minho had thought carefully before answering. "Every day," he had said honestly, "and I would do it again every time." That was the truth. Immortality was beautiful and terrible. He got to see amazing things that mortals would never witness. He had watched Mars transform from a dead planet into a living world. He had seen technology advance beyond imagination. He had learned things that would take a lifetime to understand, and he had multiple lifetimes to learn. But he also experienced loss in a way mortals could not imagine. He had buried friends. He had watched people he loved grow old and die while he stayed young. He felt the loneliness of being one of the few who would remember the early days of immortality, memories that others would forget, he would carry forever. The war with the Vorid had taught humanity many things. The Ascended learned that immortality did not mean invincibility. Many immortal soldiers had been captured by the Vorid and absorbed into the collective. They were still alive, still conscious, but trapped forever as part of the hive mind. For an immortal, that was a fate worse than death. The Naturals proved that mortality gave humans something valuable. Natural soldiers fought with a desperation that immortals could not match. They knew their time was limited, so they made every moment count. Some of the greatest victories in the war came from natural commanders taking risks that immortals would never dare. Meanwhile, Yuna had made a breakthrough in her research. She had spent decades studying the immortality liquid, trying to understand exactly how it worked. She led a team of Ascended scientists on Mars, working on projects that would have been impossible for mortal researchers. After 40 years of research, she discovered something shocking. The immortality liquid was not just a simple biological change. It was much more complex. The liquid contained dormant code, like a computer program written into their cells. This code was waiting for something to activate it. Yuna called Minho to her laboratory on Mars. When he arrived, she showed him her findings on a large screen filled with complex diagrams. "The Eternals did not just give us immortality," Yuna explained. "They gave us the potential for something more. The liquid contains instructions for the next stage of evolution. Transcendence." "What do you mean, transcendence?" Minho asked. "The Eternals did not die. They evolved beyond physical form entirely. They became pure consciousness existing on a higher plane of existence. The liquid was designed to prepare a species for this transformation over thousands of years." Minho stared at the screen. "Are you saying we could do the same thing?" "In theory, yes. But it would require activating the dormant code. And I have no idea what would happen if we tried it now. The Eternals took 5,000 years of immortality before they were ready to transcend. We have only had it for 50 years. The discovery split the Ascended community. Some wanted to activate the transcendence code immediately. Why stay in physical form if they could become something greater? Others, like Yuna, argued that rushing the process could be disastrous. They might lose their humanity entirely. While the Ascended debated transcendence, Kyung was working on her own project. She was old now, nearly 80. She had chosen to remain mortal, and her time was running out. But she wanted to contribute one more thing before she died. She led a team studying the Vorid, trying to understand their hive mind. What she discovered changed everything. The Vorid collective operated on perfect consensus. Every decision was made by the agreement of billions of minds thinking together. This made them incredibly coordinated, but it also made them predictable. They could only act when all parts of the collective agreed. If even a small percentage of the collective disagreed, they would be paralyzed. More importantly, the Vorid had no experience with individual creativity. They had absorbed dozens of species, but all of them had been hive minds or collective consciousnesses. They had never encountered a species like humans, where every individual could think independently and come up with unique ideas. Kyung realized that this was their weakness. The Vorid saw human diversity as chaos and weakness, but it was actually a massive advantage. Humans could outthink the Vorid because they had billions of independent minds working on problems, while the Vorid had only one collective mind. She developed the mimetic virus based on this insight. It was a simple idea, but one that would be revolutionary to the Vorid. The concept of individual choice. The idea that each being could think for itself, make its own decisions, and pursue its own goals. To introduce this idea into the Vorid collective, someone would need to interface directly with their hive mind at the central node. They would need to be strong enough to survive the physical strain, smart enough to navigate the alien consciousness, and unique enough to remain individual while surrounded by billions of unified minds. Minho was the obvious choice. He had 50 years of immortality, which gave him mental strength beyond normal humans. He had lived both mortal and immortal lives, so he understood the value of individual existence. And he had the courage to take risks that others would not. But he would not go alone. Yuna volunteered immediately. So did Hana. They gathered a team of 50 ascended volunteers, all experienced soldiers who had fought the Vorid for decades. The mission was incredibly dangerous. If they failed, they would not die. They would be absorbed into the Vorid collective, conscious but trapped forever. For immortals, there were fates worse than death. This was one of them. Before the mission launched, Kyung called Minho to her office. She looked frail now, moving slowly and carefully. She did not have much time left. "I wanted to give you something," she said. She handed him a small data chip. "This contains everything I have learned about the Vorid. All my research, all my theories. If something happens to me before you return, you will have all the information." Minho took the chip. "Nothing is going to happen to you. I will be back soon." Kyung smiled sadly. "I am 80 years old, Minho. I do not have many tomorrows left. But that is okay. I have lived a full life. I have seen things I never dreamed possible. I helped humanity survive a war with aliens. That is more than most people can say." "You could still drink the liquid," Minho said. "It is not too late," she shook her head. "No. I made my choice 50 years ago, just like Daeho. I am at peace with it. Mortality is not a curse, Minho. It is what makes our time precious. You immortals have forever. We mortals have to make every moment count. That urgency has value," Minho understood. He had lived long enough to see that both paths had merit. Immortality and mortality both offered something valuable. Humanity needed both. The mission team prepared to launch. They would travel to the heart of Vorid space and captured alien ships. They would infiltrate the Nexus, the central node of the collective, and they would plant the virus directly into the hive mind. It was a plan that could end the war, or it could doom them all to an eternity trapped in an alien consciousness. As the ships prepared to launch, Minho looked back at Earth. Somewhere down there, Daeho's grandchildren were living their lives. Some had chosen immortality, others had chosen to remain mortal. All of them were human, making their own choices, living their own lives. That was what he was fighting for. Not just survival, but the freedom to choose, the freedom to be mortal or immortal, cautious or bold, unified or diverse, the freedom to be human in all its chaotic, beautiful variety. The ships launched, heading into the unknown. Minho closed his eyes and prepared himself for the greatest challenge of his long life. He would face the Vorid collective. He would bring them the gift and curse of individual choice, and he would prove that humanity's diversity was not a weakness. It was their greatest strength. The journey into Vorid space took 3 months. Minho and his team traveled in captured Vorid bioships, vessels that were more alive than machine. The ships felt wrong to human senses. The walls pulsed like living tissue. The controls responded to thought rather than touch. Everything about them was organic and alien. The team had to adapt quickly. Each member wore a neural interface that allowed them to pilot the bioships. But the interface worked both ways. While they controlled the ships also connected them to the edge of the Vorid collective. They could feel it at the back of their minds, a constant pressure, millions of voices speaking in unison. "It is getting stronger," Yuna said one day. She looked tired, even though immortals did not need much sleep. "The pull of the collective. I can hear them now, even when I am not trying to. They are calling us to join them." Minho felt it too. The collective was seductive in a way he had not expected. It promised an end to loneliness, an end to doubt, an end to the burden of making choices. "Just surrender to the group," it whispered. "Let go of your individual self and become part of something greater." 3 members of the team succumbed during the journey. One day they were normal. The next day they had stopped responding. They sat in their quarters, staring at nothing, their minds already merged with the collective. Their bodies still lived, but the people they had been were gone. Hana examined them, but there was nothing she could do. "They are alive," she said quietly, "but they are not themselves anymore. The collective has absorbed them. The team held a brief ceremony. They could not bury their fallen comrades because their bodies still lived. Instead, they said goodbye to the people they had been. It was a strange, sad ritual that reminded everyone how much they were risking. As they traveled deeper into void space, they saw the true extent of the collective. Entire star systems transformed into organic structures, planets covered in biomatter that pulsed with life, asteroids hollowed out and filled with void creatures, all connected to the hive mind. It was beautiful in a terrible way. The void had achieved perfect unity, billions of beings working together without conflict, without disagreement, without individual wants or needs. Every part served the whole. Every mind thought in harmony with every other mind, but it was also horrifying. There was no individual joy, no personal achievement, no unique perspective. Everything was the same. Everyone thought the same thoughts, felt the same feelings, pursued the same goals. There was unity, but no diversity. There was order, but no creativity. Finally, after 3 months of travel, they reached the Nexus. It was a massive structure at the heart of void space, a biological station the size of a moon. This was the center of the collective, where millions of void entities connected directly to maintain the hive mind. The team split into groups. Most would stay with the ships, ready to escape if things went wrong. Minho, Yuna, and Hana would enter the Nexus and reach the core. They were the 3 most experienced, the 3 most likely to resist the collective long enough to plant the virus. They suited up and approached the Nexus. The structure did not stop them. The void believed resistance was futile. They assumed anyone who reached this deep into their territory would eventually join the collective anyway. They were confident to the point of arrogance. Inside the Nexus, the air was thick and warm. The walls were covered in organic material that pulsed with light. Void creatures floated in nutrient tanks, their minds connected through biological cables. The sound was overwhelming, a constant humming that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. As they moved deeper, the mental pressure increased. The collective was all around them now, pressing against their minds from every direction. "Join us," it said. "Become one with us. Let go of your pain, your doubts, your fears. Become perfect." Hana fell first. One moment she was walking beside them. The next she stopped moving. Her eyes went blank. She stood there swaying slightly as her mind was pulled into the collective. "Hana." Yuna grabbed her, shook her, but there was no response. She was gone. "We have to keep moving," Minho said. His voice was strained. He could feel the pull too, stronger than ever. "If we stop, we will end up like her. We have to reach the core." They left Hana standing there and pushed forward. Every step was a battle. The collective was not just in their minds now. It was in their bodies, trying to rewrite their cells to make them part of the hive. Only their immortality kept them going. Their bodies healed the changes as fast as the collective made them. Finally, they reached the core. It was a vast chamber filled with millions of void entities, all connected in a complex network of biological cables. This was the heart of the collective, the place where all decisions were made, where all thoughts originated. In the center of the chamber was an interface point, a place where they could connect directly to the hive mind. To plant the virus, one of them would have to link their consciousness to the entire collective. "I will do it," Minho said. "No," Yuna said. "We both will. If one of us fails, the other can finish." They approached the interface together. The moment they connected, the full weight of the collective crashed down on them. Billions of minds, all thinking together, all speaking with one voice. It was overwhelming. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. For a moment, Minho lost himself. He felt his individual thoughts dissolving into the greater whole. He felt the peace of surrender, the comfort of unity. He was about to let go, to join them, to become part of something larger than himself. Then he remembered. He remembered drinking the immortality liquid despite the warning. He remembered choosing his own path. He remembered Deho dying with dignity, having lived life on his own terms. He remembered humanity's chaotic, beautiful diversity. That memory was the virus, the concept of individual choice, the idea that each being could determine its own fate. He released the memory into the collective. It spread like fire through dry grass. One void entity received the memory and thought about it. Then another, then 1,000, then 1,000,000. For the first time in millennia, individual void beings had independent thoughts. What if I could choose my own purpose? What if I could pursue my own goals? What if I did not have to agree with the collective? The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The perfect unity of the collective shattered. Suddenly, billions of minds were pulling in slightly different directions. Decisions that should have been instant took minutes, then hours. The coordination that made the Vorid so powerful fell apart. Minho and Yuna pulled themselves free from the interface. They could hear the chaos spreading through the nexus. Vorid creatures were disconnecting from the network, stumbling around confused and frightened. They had never experienced individual consciousness before. They did not know how to be alone with their own thoughts. "We need to leave," Yuna said. "Now, before they figure out what is happening." They ran back through the nexus. Vorid entities ignored them now, too confused by their newfound individuality to care about intruders. They found Hana still standing where they had left her. She blinked and awareness returned to her eyes. "What happened?" she asked. "I was with the collective and then suddenly I was alone. They are all alone now. All of them. Millions of minds that have never been alone before. They made it back to their ships and launched immediately. As they left Vorid space, they could see the effects of the virus spreading. Vorid fleets stopped their coordinated attacks. Vorid stations fell into disarray. The entire collective was fracturing into millions of individual beings, each struggling to understand what it meant to think for themselves. The war had not ended, but it had changed fundamentally. The Vorid were no longer a unified threat. They were millions of confused individuals trying to figure out who they were and what they wanted. Humanity had given them the gift and curse that defined human existence: individual choice. Now they would have to learn what to do with it. The transformation of the Vorid shocked the galaxy. For thousands of years, the collective had been a unified force. Now suddenly they were fragmented into millions of individual beings. Some adjusted quickly to independence. Others struggled with the loneliness of their own thoughts. Many did not survive the transition. The war ended not because one side won, but because the Vorid were no longer capable of coordinated warfare. Their fleets scattered. Their stations went silent. Billions of former collective members tried to understand what it meant to be individuals. One former Vorid entity made contact with humanity 6 months after the virus was released. He called himself Chris, a name he had chosen for himself. He was curious about the beings who had given his people this strange gift of individual consciousness. Minho agreed to meet him. They met on a neutral station between human and former Vorid space. Chris looked similar to other Vorid beings with a segmented body and multiple limbs, but he moved differently from the others Minho had seen. He moved with uncertainty, making small adjustments and corrections. He was learning to control his body without the collective guiding him. "You destroyed us," Chris said when they met. His voice was strange, clicking and hissing in ways human vocal cords could not manage. A translator device made his words understandable. "The collective gave us purpose. It gave us unity. Now we are alone and confused." "Why did you do this?" "Because being part of a hive mind is not living," Minho said. "It is existing. You were not alive, not really. You were parts of a machine. Now you can choose your own path. You can think your own thoughts. You can be yourself." "But I do not know who myself is," Chris said. "For my entire existence I was part of the collective. I had no individual identity. Now I must create one from nothing. How do I do that?" Minho thought about the question. He had struggled with identity issues too after becoming immortal. "You try things. You make choices. Some will be mistakes. Some will be right. Over time, through your choices, you discover who you are. It is not easy, but it is worth it." Chris was quiet for a long moment. "Many of my people cannot handle this. They are dying because they do not know how to be alone. Is that also worth it?" "Change always has a cost," Minho said sadly. "But staying the same has a cost too." The collective was stagnant. You could never grow, never evolve, never become something more. Now you have that possibility. Over the next few years, humanity and the former Vorid developed a strange relationship. Some former Vorid beings were grateful for their independence. Others hated humanity for destroying their unity. Most were somewhere in between, still trying to understand what had happened to them. Chris became an ambassador of sorts, working with humans to help his people adjust. He was one of the few who fully embraced individual consciousness. He learned human languages, studied human culture, and developed his own personality. He became genuinely unique, different from any other Vorid. Meanwhile, humanity faced its own challenges. 100 years had passed since Minho first drank the immortality liquid. The generation that had lived before immortality was almost gone. Kyung had died at age 86. Most of the other naturals from that era had passed away too. A new generation had grown up in a world where immortality was normal. They did not remember a time when everyone died of old age. For them, the choice between mortality and immortality was not unusual. It was just part of life. The natural communities had shrunk. Most young people chose immortality or at least delayed the decision. Why accept death when you could live forever? The naturals worried that their way of life would disappear entirely within a few generations. But then Yuna made another breakthrough. After decades of research, she found something hidden in the immortality liquid. Something the Eternals had built in but never told anyone about. A way to reverse the transformation. Immortals could choose to become mortal again. The process was simple. Another liquid, derived from the same source that would undo the changes. It would restore normal aging, normal vulnerability, normal human biology. An immortal could drink it and return to being mortal. The discovery changed everything. Suddenly, immortality was not permanent. It was a choice that could be made and unmade. An ascended who grew tired of endless life could return to mortality. A natural who changed their mind could try immortality, knowing they could reverse it later. Yuna called a press conference to announce her findings. She was 120 years old now, but still looked like a young woman. She stood before cameras and explained what she had discovered. The Eternals were wiser than we knew, she said. They understood that true freedom requires the ability to change your mind. Immortality is only meaningful if you can choose mortality, and mortality is only meaningful if you have the option to live longer. The choice itself is what matters, not the outcome. After the announcement, Yuna made her own choice. She had been immortal for 120 years. She had seen and done everything she wanted to do. She had pushed science further than any mortal could have, but she was tired. She missed the urgency of mortality, the way it made every moment precious. She drank the reversal liquid. Within weeks, she started aging again. Her hair began to gray. Lines appeared on her face. Her body became vulnerable to injury and disease once more. She had maybe 50 or 60 years left. After 120 years of immortality, she chose to die. Minho visited her a year after she made the choice. She looked different now, older, more fragile, but she seemed happier than he had seen her in decades. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Giving up immortality?" "Not for a second," Yuna said. She smiled. "I had 120 years to accomplish what I wanted. I discovered the secrets of the Eternals. I helped humanity survive a war. I pushed the boundaries of science. Now I want to experience what I gave up. I want to feel time running out. I want every moment to matter again." "Will you miss it?" Minho asked. "Being immortal? I will miss some things," she admitted. "I will miss having time to pursue every interesting idea. I will miss not worrying about accidents or illness. But I will not miss the loneliness. I will not miss watching mortal friends die while I stay the same. And I will not miss the weight of knowing I could live forever." Others made similar choices. Some immortals who had lived for decades decided to return to mortality. Some who had been mortal decided to try immortality, knowing they could change back if they wanted. The ability to reverse the choice made it less frightening. A new pattern emerged. Some people would live mortal lives, then become immortal for a few decades, then return to mortality for their final years. Others would cycle back and forth, experiencing both states throughout their existence. There was no single right answer. Everyone found their own path. The natural communities found new purpose. Instead of opposing immortality, they became places where people could experience traditional mortal life. Many immortals visited natural communities to remember what mortality felt like. Some stayed for years before returning to immortality. One descendant of Daiho became a leader in the natural community. Her name was Suji, and she was his great-great-granddaughter. She never knew him personally, but she had heard stories about the man who stayed mortal by choice. Suji became an advocate for mortality, arguing that it still had value in a world of immortals. She gave speeches about the beauty of impermanence, the meaning that comes from limited time, the creativity that urgency inspires. One day, she asked to meet Minho. They met in a park on Earth, under trees that Daiho had once walked beneath. Suji was only 25, but she spoke with wisdom beyond her years. "My great-great-grandfather was your friend," she said. "He told his children that you were the bravest person he ever knew. Not because you drank the immortality liquid, but because you gave everyone the choice. He said you could have kept it secret or sold it or used it for power, but you gave it away freely." Minho looked at her and saw Daeho in her eyes. The same careful consideration, the same quiet strength. "Your great-great-grandfather was braver than me. He chose to stay mortal when he could have lived forever. That takes a different kind of courage." "Will you ever become mortal again?" Suji asked. Minho thought about it. He had been immortal for 100 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched technology advance beyond imagination. He had survived a war with aliens and changed the course of galactic history. "Maybe someday," he said. "But not yet. I still have work to do." Because humanity's journey was not over. It was only beginning. And Minho wanted to see where it would lead. 500 years had passed since Minho first drank the immortality liquid. He stood on the observation deck of the Hanbit 7 Memorial Station, looking out at the stars. The station was built around the original asteroid where everything began, preserved as a monument to the day humanity changed forever. Minho still looked the same as he did 5 centuries ago. Time had not touched his body, but his eyes held the weight of 500 years of memories. He had seen civilizations rise and fall. He had watched Earth transform from a single planet into the heart of a vast interstellar network. He had buried more friends than he could count. Humanity had flourished in ways the Eternals never imagined. The human population was spread across 100 star systems. Some lived mortal lives of 70 or 80 years. Others lived for centuries before choosing to return to mortality. Some cycled between the two states, experiencing both perspectives. A few, like Minho, had remained immortal for the entire 500 years. The former Vorid had integrated into galactic society. They were no longer a single collective, but millions of independent beings. Some had formed small groups, creating voluntary collectives based on shared interests rather than forced unity. Others remained fiercely individual. They had learned what it meant to be free. Then one day the message arrived. It came from the Galactic Council, an organization so old that even the Eternals had known of them. The Council represented dozens of ancient species, some millions of years old. They had watched humanity for 5 centuries, observing this young species that had achieved immortality and somehow made it work. An emissary arrived in a ship that looked like it was made from crystallized starlight. The being who emerged called itself Elder Vex. It was tall and thin, with features that suggested both great age and timelessness. Its species had existed for 10 million years. Minho met with Elder Vex in a conference chamber on the memorial station. Representatives from all 3 human factions were present. Ascended immortals who had lived for centuries, naturals who had chosen traditional lifespans, and those who cycled between both states. All of humanity wanted to hear what the council had to say. "We have observed your species with great interest," Elder Vex said. Its voice was strange, like music played on instruments humans did not have words for. "You discovered immortality only 500 years ago. Most species that achieve immortality destroy themselves within 1,000 years. But you have not only survived, you have thrived. What do you want?" Minho asked. He had learned to be direct in his long life. The very old and the very young had no patience for unnecessary words. "The Galactic Council maintains order in this region of space," Elder Vex explained. "We have rules that prevent younger species from disrupting the cosmic balance. Your species has broken several of these rules. You discovered technology you were not ready for. You transformed another species without their consent. You spread across the stars faster than any species in recorded history." The human representatives shifted uncomfortably. This sounded like an accusation. Minho waited for Elder Vex to continue. "We offer you a choice," Elder Vex said. "Submit to council guidance. Accept our rules and limitations. In return, you will gain access to our accumulated knowledge and protection from hostile forces. Or refuse our guidance and accept quarantine. You will be confined to your current territory, cut off from the greater galactic community, until you prove you can exist without disrupting the cosmic order." The human representatives began talking among themselves. The Ascended wanted to refuse. They had patience to wait out any quarantine. The Naturals worried about leaving their grandchildren in isolation. Those who cycled between states saw merit in both options. They debated for months, The council was patient. They had waited 500 years to make this offer. They could wait a few months more for an answer. Suji, the descendant of Deho, was now an old woman. She had chosen to remain mortal her entire life. At 70 years old, she was one of the few who remembered the debates from a mortal perspective. She gave a speech that resonated across all human factions. 500 years ago, our ancestors made a choice, she said. They could have kept immortality secret. They could have used it for power. Instead, they gave everyone the choice. They trusted humanity to make its own decisions. The Council is asking us to give up that freedom, but our strength has always been in choosing our own path. Why would we stop now? Her speech changed the debate. Humanity had survived 500 years by embracing choice, diversity, and freedom. Submitting to outside control, even benevolent control, went against everything they had become. Finally, the Council asked Minho to make the final decision. He was the oldest living human. He had been there from the beginning. He understood better than anyone what choices had led humanity to this moment. Minho stood before Elder Vex and the assembled representatives of humanity. He had thought about this choice for months. He had lived long enough to understand that some decisions define everything that comes after. We choose neither of your options, Minho said calmly. We choose to prove you wrong. Elder Vex tilted its head, a gesture that suggested curiosity. Explain. You say younger species must be controlled to prevent chaos, Minho continued. We say the galaxy needs what you call chaos. It needs change. It needs species willing to break old rules and find new paths. We propose a third option. Give us 1,000 years to prove that a species can maintain both immortality and mortality, both unity and diversity, both rapid change and stable culture. If we succeed, you revise your rules. If we fail, we accept quarantine. The chamber was silent. Elder Vex looked at Minho for a long moment. Then, for the first time, it made a sound that might have been laughter. In 10 million years, my species has rarely been surprised, Elder Vex said. But you humans continue to surprise us. Very well, you have 1,000 years. We will watch with great interest. The Council accepted the challenge. Humanity had bought itself time and freedom. Now they had to prove they deserved both. After the Council departed, a young woman approached Minho. She was preparing for her coming-of-age ceremony, where she would decide whether to embrace immortality or remain mortal. She looked nervous. Can I ask you something? She said. You have lived for 500 years. You have seen everything. Was it worth it? Drinking that liquid? Minho smiled. It was the same question people had been asking him for 5 centuries. And his answer was always the same. Ask me again in another 500 years, he said. I might have a different answer then. The young woman looked confused. But you have had 500 years to think about it. How can you not know? Because that is what it means to be human, Minho explained gently. Our answers are always evolving. We are always changing. We never stop questioning or growing or becoming something new. The Eternals failed because they stopped changing. The Vorid failed because they could not change. We succeeded because we embraced change. So I should choose immortality, the young woman asked. I cannot tell you what to choose, Minho said. That is the point. You have to decide for yourself. And whatever you choose, you can change your mind later. Nothing is permanent except the freedom to choose. The young woman nodded slowly and walked away, still thinking about her choice. Minho watched her go and felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. 500 years ago, he had drunk the immortality liquid without hesitation. The hologram had warned him. The Eternals had failed. Every logic said he should refuse. But he drank anyway because that was what humans did. They took risks. They made choices. They faced the unknown without fear. That single choice had led to everything that followed. The division of humanity, the war with the Vorid, the transformation of the galaxy, 500 years of consequences from one moment of courage. But the story was not over. Humanity had another 1,000 years to prove themselves. 1,000 years to show that freedom and diversity could create something better than control and unity. 1,000 years to demonstrate that change was not something to fear but something to embrace. Minho looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was watching. Somewhere out there, other species were making their own choices about immortality, freedom, and what it meant to exist. Somewhere out there, the future was being written and humanity would write its own chapter in that future. Not by following the rules of ancient species, not by accepting limits on what they could become, but by continuing to choose, to change, to grow, to be gloriously, chaotically, beautifully human. 500 years ago, a hologram had warned, "If you drink this, you will never be mortal again." Minho had drunk without fear, and humanity had never been the same. But that was the point. Humans were not meant to stay the same. They were meant to evolve, to adapt, to become something more than they were. Immortality was not the end of their journey. It was only the beginning, the end.